Under the scorching African sun, a distant roar echoed through the dense forest, sending birds scattering into the sky. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Through the thick undergrowth, an elderly woman's weathered hands parted the leaves, her heart pounding with each step toward the sound. What she discovered that day, a sight that would change not just her life, but an entire village's destiny, was a creature so rare its existence would become a testament to the extraordinary power of love and redemption. The ancient mountains of Ethiopia stood like silent guardians against the amber sky, their peaks disappearing into wisps of morning mist. Here, in the remote village of Lalibela, where time seemed to move at its own gentle pace, generations of families had carved their lives into the rich red soil and dense forests that blanketed the highlands. Among the scattered thatched-roof huts that dotted the mountainside, one modest dwelling stood apart from the rest, perched on the edge of the wilderness where civilization met the untamed wild. This humble abode belonged to Abeba, a woman whose life had been shaped by both profound loss and unwavering resilience. Her small home, built from mud bricks and crowned with a carefully woven grass roof, leaned slightly to one side, as if bearing the weight of countless seasons. The walls, though weathered by years of sun and rain, still stood strong, much like their owner. Abeba's face carried the story of her years, each line etched by both joy and sorrow, her deep brown eyes holding wisdom that could only come from a life fully lived. Her hands, rough and calloused from decades of work, moved with practiced grace as she went about her daily tasks. She wore traditional Ethiopian dress, a hand-woven cotton dress in earthy tones, adorned with intricate patterns that spoke of her heritage. 20 years had passed since she lost her family to a devastating landslide that swept through the village during the heavy rains. Her husband, 2 sons, and daughter had been among those taken by nature's fury, leaving Abeba alone, with nothing but memories and an unshakable faith that helped her survive each passing day. While others had urged her to leave, to start anew in the bustling city of Addis Ababa, Abeba chose to remain. This land, despite its harsh reminders, was home. The villagers of Lalibela had grown accustomed to seeing Abeba's solitary figure, moving through the morning mist, gathering herbs and medicinal plants from the forest's edge. She had become known as the village healer, her knowledge of traditional medicine passed down through generations of her family. People would seek her out when modern medicine failed them, or when they needed the comfort that only ancient wisdom could provide. Yet despite her respected position in the community, Abeba's days were marked by a profound solitude. Each evening, as the sun painted the mountains in shades of purple and gold, she would sit outside her hut, weaving baskets from dried grass while watching young families return from their daily work in the fields. The sound of children's laughter floating up from the village below would make her smile, even as it stirred memories of her own lost family. Her daily routine began before dawn, when the world was still wrapped in darkness, and the morning star hung like a lantern in the sky. She would rise from her simple bed, light a small fire in the cooking pit, and prepare her morning coffee using beans she roasted herself. The ritual of coffee making, roasting, grinding, brewing, was more than just routine. It was a meditation, a way to center herself before facing another day. As the first rays of sunlight began to pierce through the morning mist, Abeba would gather her collecting basket and walking stick, both constant companions in her daily journeys into the forest. The basket, woven from split bamboo and strengthened by years of use, hung comfortably from her shoulder, while the walking stick, polished smooth by countless journeys, helped her navigate the steep mountain paths. The forest that bordered her home was both provider and protector. Its dense canopy offered shade from the harsh Ethiopian sun, while its bounty supplied her with everything she needed: herbs for medicine, wood for cooking, and materials for her craft. Abeba knew every tree, every plant, every hidden spring. Within its depths, the forest had become her sanctuary, a place where the weight of loneliness seemed lighter among the ancient trees. On this particular morning, something felt different. The air held an unusual stillness, and the familiar sounds of the forest seemed muted, as if nature itself was holding its breath. Abeba paused in her gathering, her experienced ears catching the subtle shift in the forest's rhythm. Years of living on the edge of the wilderness had taught her to read these signs, to understand when the natural order had been disturbed. The traditional healers of her ancestry had passed down not just knowledge of plants and their properties, but also the wisdom to recognize when the spirits of the land were trying to communicate. Today, something was calling to her, pulling her deeper into the forest than she usually ventured. Despite her age, Abeba's steps were sure as she followed this invisible thread of destiny. Through the thick underbrush she moved, her walking stick finding secure purchase on the uneven ground. The morning dew still clung to the leaves, soaking the hem of her dress as she pushed through the vegetation. The familiar scents of wild coffee plants and flowering herbs mingled with something else, an unfamiliar presence that grew stronger as she continued her journey. The path she followed was barely visible, more animal track than human trail. It led her past ancient fig trees whose massive roots created natural steps in the mountainside, through patches of wild coffee plants that her ancestors had tended generations ago, and into parts of the forest she hadn't explored in years. The silence grew deeper, broken only by the occasional call of a distant hornbill and the soft crunch of her footsteps on the leaf-strewn ground. As she rounded a massive boulder covered in thick moss, Abeba came to an abrupt halt. Before her lay a small clearing, and in its center a sight that made her aged heart skip a beat. There, huddled against the base of a fallen tree, was a baby, Baboon, but unlike any she had ever seen in all her years in these mountains. The creature's fur, instead of the typical olive-brown of the gelada baboons that roamed these highlands, was a striking golden color that seemed to catch and hold the scattered sunlight filtering through the canopy. Its eyes, large and expressive, were a shade of amber that appeared almost human in their depth of emotion. But what struck Abeba most was not its unusual appearance, but the profound sadness and fear that emanated from its small, trembling form. The baby baboon was clearly injured, its right leg held at an awkward angle that spoke of pain and trauma. Around the clearing, Abeba could see signs of disturbance, broken branches and disturbed earth that told a story of violence. Perhaps a leopard had attacked its troop, or a clash between rival baboon groups had left this unique infant abandoned and hurt. For a long moment, woman and animal regarded each other across the small clearing. Abeba's healer's instincts warred. With her practical knowledge of wild animals, even a baby baboon could be dangerous, and interfering with nature's course often led to unforeseen consequences. Yet something in those amber eyes called to the deep well of maternal love that had lay dormant in her heart for so many years. Moving with the slow, deliberate grace that came from decades of working with nervous animals, Abeba began to hum an old lullaby her grandmother had taught her. The soft melody, ancient as the mountains themselves, filled the clearing with its gentle vibrations. The baby baboon's ears twitched, its tense posture easing slightly as the sound washed over it. "I, little one," Abeba murmured in Amharic, her voice barely above a whisper, "what terrible fate has befallen you?" She kept her movements slow and predictable as she edged closer, continuing to hum between words. "Such a special child, you are, with your golden coat shining like the sun itself." The baby baboon watched her approach, its amber eyes never leaving her face. When she was within arm's reach, it made a soft sound, not the typical bark or screech of its kind, but something almost like a whimper. The sound pierced Abeba's heart, awakening memories of comforting her own children through night terrors and scraped knees. With infinite patience, she settled herself on the ground near the injured creature, placing her collecting basket beside her. From its depths, she pulled out a piece of wild honey wrapped in leaves, a treat she occasionally indulged in during her forest excursions. The sweet scent caught the baby baboon's attention immediately, its small nostrils flaring as it caught the familiar smell. "We must build trust between us," Abeba said softly, unwrapping the honey and placing a small portion on a broad leaf. With careful movements, she placed the leaf halfway between them, then sat back, appearing completely absorbed in sorting through her basket of herbs. Minutes passed like honey dripping from a comb, slow, sweet, and full of anticipation. From the corner of her eye, Abeba watched as the baby baboon gradually shifted position, wincing as it moved its injured leg. The scent of honey proved too tempting to resist, and eventually it began to inch forward. The sun had climbed higher in the sky, warming the clearing and filling it with dappled light that danced across the golden fur of the young baboon as it finally reached the honey-laden leaf. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. As it ate, Abeba could see its injury more clearly. The leg was swollen but not broken, likely a severe sprain from whatever incident had separated it from its troop. "You are brave, little one," she murmured, slowly reaching into her basket. Again, this time she withdrew a handful of herbs she used for reducing swelling and easing pain. "Your heart is strong, but you need help to heal properly." The baby baboon looked up at her words, honey smeared around its mouth in a way that reminded her so powerfully of her own children that tears pricked at her eyes. In that moment, Abeba made a decision that would alter not only her own destiny, but that of her entire village. "I will call you Nagasi," she said softly, the name coming to her like a whisper from her ancestors. "It means he who will rule, and I sense that you, my golden child, have a great destiny ahead of you." As if in response to his new name, the baby baboon made a soft churring sound, his amber eyes meeting hers with an intelligence that seemed to transcend the boundaries between human and animal. In that sacred moment, as the forest held its breath around them, a bond was formed that would grow to become legend in the mountains of Lalibela. The journey back to her hut was slow and careful. Abeba had fashioned a sling from her headscarf, cradling Nagasi against her chest as she navigated the steep forest paths. The baby baboon's trust, though tentative, was evident in the way he clung to her dress, his small fingers gripping the fabric with surprising strength. With each step, Abeba's mind raced with plans and preparations. She knew the challenges ahead would be numerous, treating his injury, earning his complete trust, and eventually facing the inevitable questions and concerns of the villagers. But something deep in her soul told her that this was right, that her years of solitude had been preparing her for this very moment. As they emerged from the forest's edge, the late afternoon sun painted the mountains in shades of gold that matched Nagasi's unusual fur. Abeba paused, looking down at the small creature in her arms, and felt something she hadn't experienced in 20 years, the stirring of hope, bright and powerful as the dawn. "Welcome home, my little king," she whispered as they crossed the threshold of her humble dwelling. "May our journey together bring healing to us both." Little did Abeba know, but that simple act of compassion would set in motion a chain of events that would transform not only her life, but the entire community of Lalibela, teaching lessons of love, acceptance, and the extraordinary bonds that can form between the most unlikely of souls. The first days of caring for Nagasi tested both Abeba's patience and wisdom. Her skills as a healer, honed through decades of treating villagers and their livestock, now faced a unique challenge in this golden-furred infant baboon. She transformed her humble hut into a sanctuary of healing, creating a soft bed of woven grass near her own sleeping mat where Nagasi could rest his injured leg. Using her knowledge of traditional medicine, Abeba prepared a poultice of crushed herbs and warm water, carefully applying it to the swollen limb. Nagasi would whimper softly. During these treatments, his amber eyes fixed on her face with a trust that grew stronger each day. She spoke to him constantly in both Amharic and the ancient healing songs of her ancestors, her voice becoming a soothing balm that helped ease his pain and fear. The early mornings became their special time together, as dawn painted the mountains. In shades of pink and gold, Abeba would carry Nagasi outside to a small platform she had built beside her hut. Here they would watch the sun rise together while she performed the traditional coffee ceremony. The rich aroma of freshly roasted beans seemed to fascinate the young baboon, who would sit perfectly still, watching every movement of her hands as she prepared the brew. "You see, Nagasi," she would explain, her weathered hands moving with practiced grace. "First we roast the beans until they shine like your fur. Then we grind them with this wooden mortar. It belonged to my grandmother and her grandmother before her. The rhythmic sound of crushing coffee beans would mix with the morning birds' songs, creating a peaceful symphony that marked the beginning of each new day." As Nagasi's leg began to heal, his true personality emerged like a butterfly from its chrysalis. Despite his injury, he showed an extraordinary curiosity about everything in and around the hut. He would watch intently as Abeba wove baskets, his small hands sometimes reaching out to touch the dried grass she used. When she sorted herbs, he would smell each bundle, as if trying to memorize their unique scents. What struck Abeba most was Nagasi's remarkable intelligence. Unlike other baboons she had observed in the wild, he seemed to understand not just her words, but the intentions behind them. When she needed to change his poultice, he would extend his injured leg without prompting. If she was preparing medicine for villagers, he would sit quietly, watching her work with an almost human-like concentration. The first major breakthrough in their relationship came during a sudden mountain storm. The thunder crashed overhead like angry spirits, making the walls of the hut tremble. Nagasi, still weak from his injury, began to shake with fear. Without hesitation, he hobbled to Abeba's side, burying his face in her dress. Instead of pushing him away, she gathered him close, humming the same lullaby she had used in the forest. "Fear not, my golden child," she whispered, stroking his soft fur. "The storm may rage outside, but in here you are safe. We are safe together." As the thunder continued its mighty chorus, Nagasi gradually relaxed in her arms, his small body warm against hers. That night marked a transformation in their bond, from caregiver and patient to something deeper, more profound. As weeks passed, Nagasi's leg healed completely, but the bond between them only grew stronger. He began to show an eagerness to help with daily tasks that amazed even Abeba. When she would gather herbs from her small garden, he would watch carefully, then begin picking the same plants she had chosen. Though his early attempts were clumsy, he quickly learned to identify different herbs by their appearance and smell. One morning, as Abeba prepared to collect water from the stream, Nagasi surprised her by picking up one of her smaller water gourds. Though it was almost as big as he was, he determinedly followed her down the path, the gourd clutched carefully in his hands. When they reached the stream, he watched her fill her large gourd, then mimicked her actions with his smaller one. The joy in his amber eyes when he successfully carried it back to the hut brought tears to Abeba's eyes. "You are truly special, Nagasi," she said, kneeling beside him as he carefully placed his gourd among the others. "Your heart holds wisdom beyond your years." The young baboon responded by gently touching her face, a gesture that would become his signature way of showing affection. News of the unusual golden baboon began to spread through the village, carried on whispers and curious glances. Some villagers, remembering Abeba's skills as a healer, began to make excuses to visit her hut, hoping to catch a glimpse of her mysterious companion. At first, Nagasi would hide when strangers approached, but gradually, encouraged by Abeba's calm presence, he began to show himself. The children were the first to accept him without question. They were fascinated by his golden fur and gentle demeanor, so different from the wild baboons that sometimes raided their families' crops. Abeba would watch from her doorway as Nagasi carefully interacted with the young ones, showing a patience and gentleness that seemed almost impossible for his age. One such afternoon, a young girl named Desta arrived with her mother, seeking treatment for a persistent cough. While Abeba prepared the medicine, Nagasi noticed that Desta was having trouble breathing. Without prompting, he retrieved the exact herbs Abeba used for respiratory problems from her storage baskets, placing them at her feet. The mother's initial fear turned to amazement as she watched the small baboon's deliberate actions. "How does he know?" she asked, her voice filled with wonder. Abeba smiled, picking up the herbs Nagasi had chosen. "He watches, he learns, and, most importantly, he cares," she replied, beginning to prepare the medicine. "Allah has blessed him with not just unusual appearance, but an unusual heart as well." As Nagasi grew stronger, he began to venture further from the hut, always under Abeba's watchful eye. His golden fur made him easy to spot among the green foliage, like a living flame moving through the forest. He would return from these excursions with gifts, a particularly beautiful flower, an interesting leaf, or sometimes wild berries that he remembered Abeba gathering. But it was his interaction with other animals that truly set him apart. Birds that would normally flee from baboons would perch near him, filling the air with their songs. Even the cautious mountain nyalas, with their spiral horns and shy nature, seemed at ease in his presence. It was as if his gentle spirit was recognized by all of nature's creatures. One day, while Abeba was teaching him to identify medicinal plants in the forest, they encountered a young colobus monkey with an injured tail. Instead of showing aggression or fear, Nagasi approached the injured animal slowly, making soft, reassuring sounds. To Abeba's amazement, he then led the injured monkey back to their hut, looking at her expectantly. "You want me to help your new friend, don't you?" she asked, already reaching for her healing herbs. Nagasi watched intently as she treated the monkey's wound, his amber eyes following every movement of her hands. When the treatment was complete, the colobus monkey stayed near their hut for several days, with Nagasi sharing his food and keeping it company until it was strong enough to return to its troop. This incident marked the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. Word spread through the nearby villages of the Golden Baboon, who helped injured animals, and soon people began bringing their sick or injured livestock to Abeba's hut. Nagasi would assist in his own way, sometimes holding herbs for Abeba, other times simply sitting with the anxious animals, his presence somehow calming them during treatment. The bond between Abeba and Nagasi continued to deepen in unexpected ways. He began to anticipate her needs, bringing her walking stick before long journeys into the forest, or fetching her shawl when the evening air grew cool. During the coffee ceremony, he would now help arrange the cups and clean the roasting pan, his movements becoming more precise and deliberate with each passing day. But it was in moments of quiet companionship that their connection shone brightest. In the evenings, as the sun set behind the mountains, they would sit together outside the hut. Abeba would tell stories of her past, of her lost family, and of the ancient wisdom passed down through generations of healers. Nagasi would listen intently, sometimes reaching out to wipe away her tears when memories became too painful. "You have brought light back into my life, my golden child," she would often say, stroking his fur as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky. "You are the sun my heart needed to heal." As months passed, Nagasi grew not just in size, but in his abilities to help and heal. He developed an uncanny knack for knowing which herbs were needed for different ailments, often gathering them before Abeba even asked. His gentle touch and calm presence became known throughout the region as a source of comfort for both humans and animals alike. The transformation in Abeba was equally remarkable. The weight of loneliness that had bent her shoulders for so many years seemed to lift. Her laugh, once rarely heard, now rang out frequently, especially when Nagasi would mimic her actions or bring her unexpected gifts from his forest explorations. Together, they created a new kind of healing sanctuary, where the boundaries between human and animal, healer and helper, mother and child blurred into something unique and beautiful. Their story began to spread beyond the mountains of Lalibela, carried by travelers and traders who spoke of the widow and her golden baboon helper with a mixture of awe and reverence. But as Nagasi continued to grow and his abilities became more pronounced, some began to whisper that such intelligence in an animal was unnatural. These murmurs of concern were still faint, like distant thunder before a storm, but they would soon grow into challenges that would test not only their bond, but the very nature of love and acceptance in their community. For now, though, in their peaceful corner of the Ethiopian highlands, Abeba and Nagasi continued their daily routine of healing and learning from each other. Each sunrise brought new opportunities for growth, each sunset a chance to reflect on the miraculous journey that had brought them together. As the stars emerged each night, Abeba would often find herself offering prayers of gratitude for the unique blessing that had come into her life. In Nagasi, she had found not just a companion, but a purpose, a chance to share her healing knowledge with a being who seemed destined to carry it forward in his own extraordinary way. Little did they know that their greatest challenges and most profound opportunities to demonstrate the power of their bond still lay ahead. But for now, in the quiet moments between sunset and starlight, they had found a peace that transcended the ordinary boundaries of existence, creating a harmony that would become legendary in the mountains of Ethiopia. As Nagasi grew, his transformation from a small injured infant into a magnificent adolescent baboon was nothing short of extraordinary. His golden fur had grown thicker and more lustrous, shimmering like spun sunlight when he moved through the dappled forest shadows. His size now rivaled that of the largest male gelada baboons in the region, but it was his eyes, those remarkable amber pools of intelligence, that truly set him apart. The simple routines he and Abeba had established during his early days evolved into complex patterns of cooperation that amazed anyone fortunate enough to witness them. During their healing sessions, Nagasi no longer simply watched or fetched herbs. He had begun to demonstrate an almost supernatural ability to diagnose ailments before Abeba herself could identify them. One particularly memorable morning, as the mist still clung to the mountainside, a desperate mother arrived carrying her feverish child. Before Abeba could even begin her examination, Nagasi was already gathering specific fever-reducing herbs, along with roots she typically used for treating underlying infections. His selections proved perfect. The child had both a high fever and a hidden ear infection that might have been overlooked in the initial assessment. "How does he know?" the mother whispered, watching in awe as Nagasi gently placed a cooling leaf on her child's forehead. "He sees with his heart," Abeba replied, her own eyes filling with pride. "Allah has blessed him with wisdom that goes beyond our understanding." As news of Nagasi's abilities spread, their humble hut became a place of pilgrimage for those seeking healing. People traveled from distant villages bringing sick children, injured relatives, and ailing livestock. What they found was far more than just a unique baboon. They discovered a healing partnership between woman and animal that defied conventional explanation. Nagasi's methods of healing were as unique as his appearance. For children too frightened to take bitter medicines, he would perform simple tricks, balancing fruits on his nose or making funny faces, until their laughter made swallowing the remedies easier. For those in pain, he would sit beside them, his gentle presence somehow easing their suffering. His touch, always careful and deliberate, seemed to carry its own healing energy. But it was his work with traumatized animals that truly showcased his extraordinary abilities. A farmer brought in a horse so badly frightened by a lightning strike that no one could approach it. Nagasi spent hours simply sitting near the terrified animal, occasionally making soft, melodic sounds unlike any baboon call anyone had ever heard. By sunset, the horse was calmly eating from his hand, its fear transformed into trust. Abeba watched these interactions with growing wonder. The injured infant she had rescued had become not just a helper, but a healer in his own right. His methods, while different from traditional medicine, were undeniably effective. He seemed to possess an innate understanding of suffering, whether physical or emotional, and an uncanny ability to ease it. Their partnership deepened through shared experiences. During the rainy season, when herbs were scarce, Nagasi discovered new plants with medicinal properties that even Abeba, with all her years of experience, hadn't known about. He would carefully show her how to prepare these new medicines, using gestures and expressions to communicate their proper use. One day, while treating a young boy with a mysterious illness, Nagasi demonstrated perhaps his most remarkable skill yet. The boy had been brought in with symptoms no one could diagnose, not even Abeba, with all her knowledge. After examining the child, Nagasi disappeared into the forest, returning hours later with a collection of plants Abeba had never used for healing. Through an elaborate series of gestures, he showed her how to combine them into a treatment that ultimately saved the boy's life. "Your golden helper is blessed with knowledge from beyond," the boy's father said, tears of gratitude streaming down his face. He must have been sent by God. Yet not everyone viewed Nagasi's abilities with such acceptance. As his reputation grew, so did the whispers of those who feared what they couldn't understand. Some began to question whether his intelligence was natural, whether such abilities in an animal could be a sign of something darker. The first signs of trouble came from a group of religious leaders from a neighboring village. They arrived one afternoon, their faces stern with concern. "It is not right," their spokesman declared, "for an animal to possess such knowledge. It goes against the natural order." Abeba stood her ground, her voice firm but kind. "Who are we to say what is natural and what is not? Look at the good he does, the lives he has helped save. Are these not also gifts from the divine?" The debate might have ended there, but for what happened next. As the religious leaders argued, a commotion arose from the path leading to the hut. A group of villagers was rushing toward them, carrying a child who had fallen from a tree. The boy's arm was badly broken, the bone visibly displaced beneath the skin. Without hesitation, Nagasi moved into action. He gathered specific herbs for pain and inflammation, then, with gentle but sure movements, indicated to Abeba exactly how the bone should be set. His gestures were so precise, his understanding of the injury so clear, that even the skeptical leaders fell silent in amazement. Working together, Abeba and Nagasi treated the boy. The golden baboon's presence seemed to calm the child's fears, while his intuitive knowledge guided Abeba's experienced hands. When the treatment was complete, the boy's arm was properly set and bandaged, his pain eased by their combined efforts. "Tell me," Abeba said quietly to the religious leaders, "does this look like something evil? Or does it look like a blessing, one we may not understand, but a blessing nonetheless?" The incident marked a turning point in how many viewed Nagasi. While some still harbored doubts, most began to accept that his abilities, however unusual, were a force for good in their community. His gentle nature and obvious desire to help others spoke louder than any fears about the source of his knowledge. As his acceptance grew, so did his role in the community. He began to teach others in his own unique way. Young apprentice healers would watch in fascination as he demonstrated which plants could be used for different ailments. Children would follow him through the forest, learning from his example which fruits were safe to eat and which to avoid. Even the other baboons in the region seemed to recognize something special about him. When wild troops would pass near the village, instead of showing aggression, they would maintain a respectful distance. Sometimes injured or sick baboons would actually seek him out, as if knowing he could help them. The most remarkable transformation, however, was in the village itself. The presence of Nagasi had begun to change how people viewed the relationship between humans and animals. Where once they saw only differences, they now began to recognize the connections that bound all living things together. One evening, as Abeba and Nagasi sat outside their hut, watching the sunset. She reflected on all the changes their partnership had brought about. "You have taught us so much," she said softly, stroking his golden fur. "Not just about healing, but about love, acceptance, and the wisdom that can come from unexpected sources." Nagasi turned to look at her, his amber eyes reflecting the dying light. In that moment, Abeba saw something that brought tears to her eyes, not just intelligence or understanding, but a depth of compassion that transcended species. He gently wiped away her tears, just as he had done countless times before, his touch full of tenderness and empathy. But their peaceful existence was about to face its greatest challenge yet. The very abilities that had made Nagasi a beloved. Healer would soon draw attention from those who saw him as something to be studied, controlled, or exploited. The whispers of his extraordinary capabilities had traveled far beyond their mountain community, reaching ears that would soon bring dramatic changes to their lives. As the sun set on another day of healing and teaching, neither Abeba nor Nagasi could have known that their greatest test and their opportunity to demonstrate the true power of their bond was rapidly approaching. Yet even in the face of what was to come, the foundation they had built, a partnership based on love, trust, and mutual understanding, would prove stronger than any force that might try to break it. The cool evening air carried the scent of brewing coffee and healing herbs, mingled with the distant sounds of the village preparing for night. In their quiet corner of the mountains, woman and baboon continued their gentle routine, each movement a testament to the extraordinary relationship they had forged. Their story, already remarkable, was about to enter its most challenging chapter, one that would test not just their bond, but the very nature of love, loyalty, and the power of unconditional acceptance. As darkness settled over the mountains, Nagasi helped Abeba gather her medicines for the next day, his movements precise and purposeful. Together, they had created something unique, a healing practice that combined ancient wisdom with something entirely new, a partnership that defied explanation, but whose results could not be denied. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as they had faced everything else, together, their hearts beating as one despite the different forms they wore. The golden light of dawn had not yet touched the mountain peaks when the first signs of change arrived in Lalibela. A convoy of sleek vehicles wound their way up the narrow dirt roads, their modern presence stark against the ancient landscape. Inside them were scientists, researchers, and government officials who had traveled from Addis Ababa, drawn by reports of the extraordinary golden baboon. The village stirred with nervous energy as the strangers began setting up their equipment. Their arrival marked the beginning of a new chapter in Nagasi's story, one that would challenge everything he and Abeba had built together. Dr. McConnell, a prominent primatologist from the University of Addis Ababa, led the research team. His weathered face and kind eyes set him apart from his more eager colleagues. When he first approached Abeba's hut, he did so with respect, removing his shoes at the threshold as tradition dictated. "We've heard remarkable things about your companion," he said softly, his gaze fixed on Nagasi, who stood protectively near. "Abeba, his abilities, they could revolutionize our understanding of primate intelligence." Abeba felt a tightening in her chest. "Nagasi is not a subject for study," she replied firmly. "He is family." But the pressure to allow scientific observation grew. The government officials spoke of conservation grants, improved facilities for treating patients, and the advancement of medical knowledge. They promised that all studies would be observational only, that Nagasi would not be taken away or harmed. The village elders, seeing an opportunity for their community's development, urged Abeba to cooperate. Think of the good that could come. From this, they said, your healing work could reach far beyond our mountains. After much deliberation and silent communication with Nagasi, who seemed to understand the gravity of the situation, Abeba agreed to limited observation. But she set strict conditions. All research would be conducted at their hut under her supervision, and Nagasi's comfort would be paramount. The initial days of study revealed things that amazed even Abeba. Under controlled conditions, Nagasi demonstrated an understanding of complex medical concepts that shouldn't have been possible for a non-human primate. He could identify infections before symptoms appeared, predict complications in healing, and somehow sense emotional trauma in patients. Dr. McConnon's reports attracted worldwide attention. Soon, more researchers arrived, each with their own agenda. Some wanted to test Nagasi's DNA, others proposed behavioral experiments. The peaceful routine of healing they had established began to fracture under the weight of scientific scrutiny. Yet through it all, Nagasi's dedication to healing never wavered. Between research sessions, he continued his work with patience, his gentle presence and remarkable abilities touching more lives than ever. His interactions with sick children became legendary. He seemed to know exactly how to comfort each one, whether through playful distraction or quiet companionship. One morning, a film crew arrived to document their story. As cameras rolled, capturing their daily routines, Abeba noticed something different in Nagasi's behavior. He seemed more reserved, his movements less natural. The joy that usually radiated from him during healing sessions had dimmed. That evening, after everyone had left, Nagasi sat beside Abeba as she prepared their evening coffee. His amber eyes held a sadness she had never seen before. Without words, he conveyed what she had already felt. Their sacred space, their healing sanctuary, had been transformed into something else entirely. The transformation of Abeba's peaceful sanctuary into a hub of scientific activity brought unexpected challenges. The constant presence of researchers, their equipment and their endless questions began to take its toll on both Nagasi and the healing work that had become their life's purpose. Yet even in these trying times, the golden baboon's remarkable spirit found new ways to shine. One particularly tense morning, as researchers huddled around their computers analyzing data, a commotion erupted outside the hut. A young mother had rushed up the mountain path, carrying her unconscious child. The boy had fallen into a deep ravine, and his breathing was shallow and irregular. Without hesitation, Nagasi abandoned the ongoing research session, moving with purposeful grace to the injured child. The researchers watched in amazement as the golden baboon conducted his own unique examination. His amber eyes seemed to look beyond the visible injuries, his gentle hands moving with incredible precision over the child's body. Through a series of complex gestures, he communicated to Abeba exactly where the internal injuries lay. Information that would have taken modern medical equipment to detect. Dr. McConnon, who had been skeptical of some of the more extraordinary claims about Nagasi's abilities, found himself reaching for his notebook with trembling hands. "This is unprecedented," he whispered, watching as Nagasi gathered specific herbs and roots, combining them in ways that even Abeba had never seen before. The treatment that followed became a perfect demonstration of the harmony between traditional healing and Nagasi's unique abilities. While Abeba prepared the medicines according to his guidance, he maintained constant physical contact with the child, his touch somehow stabilizing the boy's erratic breathing. The researchers' equipment registered changes they couldn't explain, the child's vital signs responding to Nagasi's presence in ways that defied conventional medical understanding. As the boy's condition stabilized, his mother fell to her knees in gratitude. "Allah has blessed us with an angel in animal form," she declared, tears streaming down her face. The researchers exchanged glances, their scientific skepticism warring with the undeniable evidence before them. This incident marked a turning point in the research team's approach. Dr. McConnell, in particular, began to shift his focus from conventional scientific observation to documenting the holistic nature of Nagasi's healing abilities. He noticed how the golden baboon integrated emotional comfort with physical treatment, how his methods adapted to each individual patient's needs. However, not everyone viewed these developments positively. A rival research team arrived from abroad, led by a scientist whose interests seemed more focused on exploitation than understanding. Dr. James Morrison, with his cold eyes and calculating demeanor, saw Nagasi as a specimen to be studied in a controlled environment. "Think of the advances we could make in a proper facility," Morrison argued during a heated meeting with village elders. "This is too important to leave in the hands of traditional healers." The suggestion of removing Nagasi from his home and Abeba's care sent shockwaves through the community. Even those who had initially supported the research began to question its direction. The golden baboon's response to these discussions was remarkable. He demonstrated an even deeper commitment to his healing work, as if proving that his abilities were intrinsically linked to his connection with Abeba and their mountain home. During this period of uncertainty, Nagasi's skills continued to evolve in astonishing ways. He began incorporating elements of modern medicine he had observed from the researchers into his traditional healing methods. When a doctor left behind a stethoscope, Nagasi learned to use it effectively, combining its insights with his intuitive understanding of illness. One particularly powerful demonstration of his adaptability came when a group of doctors visited from the capital's main hospital. They brought medical imaging printouts of various conditions, intending to test Nagasi's diagnostic abilities. To their amazement, he not only correctly identified the ailments shown in the images, but also indicated additional complications that the initial diagnoses had missed. "He's not just mimicking medical procedures," Dr. McConnell observed. "He's synthesizing multiple forms of healing knowledge into something entirely new." The conflict between the different research teams came to a head during the rainy season, when a series of landslides cut off several nearby villages from medical help. While Morrison's team saw this as an opportunity to document Nagasi's abilities, under stress, the golden baboon had other plans. Without waiting for research protocols or approval, Nagasi began organizing healing expeditions to the isolated villages. He would gather specific herbs before each journey, seeming to know exactly what would be needed. More remarkably, he began teaching other local healers his methods, using gestures and demonstrations to share his knowledge. The sight of the magnificent golden baboon leading teams of human healers through treacherous mountain paths became a powerful symbol of hope for the isolated communities. His presence alone seemed to boost morale, while his medical interventions saved numerous lives during this crisis. Dr. Morrison's frustration grew as he watched his carefully planned research agenda crumble in the face of Nagasi's autonomous actions. This is exactly why the subject needs to be in a controlled environment, he argued. We're losing valuable data. But Dr. McConnell saw something else entirely. We're not losing data, he countered. We're witnessing the evolution of healing. Itself, this isn't just about studying a unique specimen. It's about learning from a gifted healer who happens to be a baboon. The contrast between these perspectives came to a dramatic head one stormy night, when Morrison's team attempted to sedate and remove Nagasi while Lalibela slept. They hadn't counted on the deep bond between woman and baboon, nor on the community's loyalty to their beloved healers. Nagasi's distressed calls awakened not just Lalibela, but the entire village. As Morrison's team tried to force the golden baboon into a transport cage, they found themselves surrounded by villagers wielding tools and torches. The standoff might have turned violent, if not for Nagasi himself. Despite his own distress, the golden baboon broke free from his captors and immediately went to calm the angry villagers. His presence and peaceful gestures diffused the tension, demonstrating once again the depth of his wisdom and compassion. This incident proved to be the catalyst for change. The village council, supported by Dr. McConnell's recommendations, banned all invasive research. Instead, they established a new healing center that combined traditional methods with modern medicine, with Nagasi and Lalibela at its heart. The golden baboon's legend only grew stronger as the healing center flourished. People traveled from across Ethiopia and beyond to witness his extraordinary abilities and benefit from his care. More importantly, his example inspired a new generation of healers who learned to combine different medical traditions with the same compassion and wisdom he demonstrated. As the years passed, Nagasi's influence extended far beyond individual healing. He became a symbol of the bridge between traditional and modern medicine, between human and animal consciousness, between scientific understanding and intuitive wisdom. His presence challenged people to expand their understanding of intelligence, consciousness, and the connections between all living beings. Researchers who came to study him often found themselves transformed by the experience, their scientific objectivity softened by witnessing the depth of his emotional intelligence and healing abilities. Many wrote papers and books about their observations, but all admitted that words couldn't fully capture the extraordinary nature of what they had witnessed. Through it all, Nagasi remained devoted to his original purpose, healing those in need. Each dawn would find him gathering herbs with the same care he had shown as a young baboon. Each sunset would see him sitting beside Lalibela, sharing the quiet wisdom that had become their common language. Their partnership continued to deepen, transcending the boundaries between species to demonstrate what was possible when love, wisdom, and healing came together in perfect harmony. Yet even as their influence grew, both Lalibela and Nagasi remained humble servants of the healing arts, their extraordinary bond a testament to the limitless possibilities of the heart. As the story of the golden baboon spread across continents, it carried with it a profound message about the nature of wisdom, compassion, and the healing power of unconditional love. But for those who were fortunate enough to witness Nagasi's work firsthand, the most powerful lesson was perhaps the simplest, that true healing comes not from the medicine alone, but from the heart of the healer, regardless of their form. However, even as Nagasi's influence grew within the healing center, new challenges emerged that would test not just his abilities, but the very foundation of trust between humans and animals. A severe drought struck the region, pushing both wildlife and humans to their limits. Wild baboon troops began raiding villages for food, creating tension and fear among the communities. But Nagasi saw this crisis as an opportunity to demonstrate an even deeper level of healing, not just of bodies, but of relationships between species. Using his unique position of trust among both humans and animals, he began mediating these conflicts in extraordinary ways. One remarkable morning, as farmers prepared to drive away a troop of hungry baboons from their fields, Nagasi intervened. With careful, deliberate movements, he showed the farmers how to set aside a portion of their crops in a designated area away from the main fields. Then, through a series of vocalizations, unlike anything the villagers had ever heard, he communicated with the wild troop, guiding them to this alternative food source. This simple act evolved into a sophisticated system of cooperation between the villages and local wildlife. Under Nagasi's guidance, the communities began implementing sustainable practices that allowed both humans and animals to thrive even in harsh conditions. His ability to bridge the gap between species transformed age-old conflicts into opportunities for mutual support. The drought's intensity tested everyone's resilience, but it also showcased Nagasi's extraordinary ability to find solutions where others saw only conflicts. He developed an intricate system of water management, showing villagers how to create small catchments that could serve both human and animal needs. His understanding of the landscape, combined with his ability to communicate with wildlife, created a harmonious balance that had never existed before. During this time, Nagasi's size and strength reached their peak. His golden fur, now streaked with deeper amber tones, made him an impressive figure as he moved between the villages and wild spaces. Yet despite his imposing presence, he maintained the gentle demeanor that had always characterized his interactions with both humans and animals. The healing center evolved into something far more comprehensive than anyone had imagined. Under Nagasi's influence, it became a place where traditional medicine, modern healthcare, and environmental stewardship merged seamlessly. He showed an uncanny ability to diagnose not just individual ailments, but systemic problems that affected entire communities. One particularly dramatic demonstration of his expanded abilities came during a mysterious illness that began affecting both humans and livestock. While modern doctors were baffled by the symptoms, Nagasi led Lalibela and other healers to a contaminated water source high in the mountains. His solution involved not just treating the sick, but implementing a complex filtration system using local plants and natural materials. The success of these interventions drew attention from environmental scientists and conservation experts. They were amazed by Nagasi's holistic approach to healing, which considered the interconnections between human health, animal welfare, and environmental sustainability. His methods challenged conventional wisdom and inspired new approaches to conservation and community health. The shadow of illness crept silently over Lalibela's hut one autumn morning, as subtle as the mist that clung to the Ethiopian highlands. At first, the changes were barely noticeable. A slight tremor in her normally steady hands, a softness in her once strong voice. But Nagasi, with his profound connection to his adoptive mother, sensed the shift immediately. His amber eyes watched her with growing concern as she moved more slowly through their daily healing routines. While villagers still came seeking their combined wisdom, Nagasi took on more of the healing duties. His abilities had reached their peak. his understanding of both traditional and modern medicine now seamless. He could diagnose complex conditions with a single touch, prepare intricate herbal remedies, and even operate some of the modern medical equipment that had been donated to their healing center. The bond between them had grown so deep that words became unnecessary. When Abeba needed to rest, Nagasi would silently guide patients to wait, bringing her water and arranging cushions with gentle care. His massive golden form would hover protectively nearby as she caught her breath, his presence both guardian and comforter. One particularly challenging day, as Abeba struggled to prepare medicines with shaking hands, Nagasi made a decision that showcased his extraordinary intelligence. He began gathering the young apprentice healers who had been learning from them over the years. Through elaborate gestures and demonstrations, he started to pass on their combined knowledge more intensively than before. The sight of the massive, golden baboon teaching human students became a powerful symbol of wisdom, transcending all boundaries. He would guide their hands as they prepared medicines, correct their techniques with gentle touches, and demonstrate the subtle signs of various ailments. His methods combined Abeba's traditional knowledge with his own unique insights, creating a new synthesis of healing wisdom. Despite her weakening condition, Abeba watched these teaching sessions with profound pride. "You understand, don't you?" she whispered to Nagasi one evening as they sat together watching the sunset. "You're ensuring our knowledge lives on." The golden baboon's response was to gently wipe away her tears, just as he had done countless times over the years. As news of Abeba's declining health spread, people came from far and wide, not seeking healing this time, but to pay respects to the woman who had helped create something miraculous. Many brought their children, wanting them to witness the extraordinary partnership that had changed so many lives. Dr. Mekonnen, who had remained a loyal friend through the years, arrived with a team of specialists. But even with modern medical equipment and expertise, they could only confirm what Nagasi had already sensed. Abeba's time was growing short. Age and a lifetime of service had taken their toll on her body. The golden baboon's response to this news demonstrated yet again his remarkable emotional intelligence. While continuing to care for his beloved Abeba, he began preparing the community for the transition ahead. He worked with the apprentice healers more intensively, ensuring they could maintain the healing center's work. He strengthened the networks of cooperation he had built between villages and wildlife, making sure these systems could survive without his direct oversight. Most remarkably, he began selecting and training certain wild baboons who showed heightened intelligence and empathy. These chosen few would spend hours with him, learning his methods of communication and conflict resolution. It was as if he was creating a legacy that would bridge the gap between species long after he was gone. One crystal-clear morning, as the first rays of sun painted the mountains gold, Abeba called her closest friends and students to her bedside. Nagasi sat beside her, his massive form gentle and attentive as always. "My time is coming," she said softly, her voice weak but peaceful. "But do not mourn too deeply. Look at what we have built together. Not just a healing center, but a new way of understanding between all living things." The days that followed were filled with both sadness and celebration. Villages held ceremonies, honoring Abeba's lifetime of service. People shared stories of healings, both ordinary and miraculous. Through it all, Nagasi remained constantly by her side, attending to her every need with unwavering devotion. On her final night, as the stars emerged like scattered diamonds across the African sky, Abeba and Nagasi sat together one last time. Outside their hut, the air was filled with the sweet scent of night-blooming jasmine, and distant leopards called to each other across the valleys. "You were never just my helper, Nagasi," she whispered, her frail hand resting in his powerful. "Golden One, you were my teacher, my protector, my son. You showed us all what love truly means." The golden baboon's amber eyes filled with tears as he gently pressed his forehead to hers, their special gesture of affection throughout the years. As the moon rose over the mountains, Abeba took her last peaceful breath, surrounded by love and the legacy she had helped create. Nagasi's mournful cry echoed through the valleys, a sound so full of emotion that it brought tears to every ear that heard it. The funeral that followed was unlike any the region had ever seen. People came from every village, bringing offerings and memories. But it was Nagasi's actions that transformed the ceremony into something extraordinary. He had gathered flowers from every healing plant they had ever used together, creating a fragrant bed for her final rest. As they prepared to lower her body into the grave, Nagasi did something that left the gathered crowd in awe. He began performing the traditional Ethiopian funeral rites, movements he had watched countless times over the years but had never performed. Himself, his massive golden form moved with grace and purpose, honoring his adopted mother in both human and animal ways. The days following Abeba's death revealed new depths to Nagasi's character. While his grief was evident in his quieter demeanor, he threw himself into their work with renewed purpose. He began implementing new programs at the healing center, combining everything he had learned from Abeba with innovative approaches of his own. One of his most significant initiatives involved creating a formal training program that brought together traditional healers, modern medical students, and even local wildlife experts. His teaching methods, though unconventional, proved remarkably effective. He would demonstrate the connections between human health, animal welfare, and environmental balance in ways that transformed how people understood healing. The golden baboon's influence continued to grow, but in new and unexpected ways. He began making regular journeys into the wilderness, often returning with injured animals that he would treat at the center. These sessions became valuable teaching opportunities, showing how healing principles could be applied across species. More remarkably, he started teaching other baboons more systematically. Under his guidance, several troops began showing unprecedented levels of cooperation with human communities. They would warn villages of approaching predators, help locate lost children, and even assist in finding medicinal plants. As months passed, stories of Nagasi's work spread even further. Conservation organizations and research institutions sought to understand and document his methods. But unlike the earlier days of scientific interest, Nagasi now controlled how these interactions would proceed. He would share his knowledge only with those who showed genuine respect for both traditional wisdom and the natural world. 1 year after Abeba's passing, during the ceremony marking her death, Nagasi demonstrated the full extent of his evolution. He gathered the entire community and, through a combination of gestures, expressions, and actions, conveyed a complex message about the future of their healing work. He showed them how to maintain the balance they had created between modern and traditional medicine, between human needs and wildlife conservation, between physical healing and spiritual well-being. His teachings that day became the foundation for what would become known as the Abeba principles of holistic healing. But perhaps his most powerful legacy was the way he continued to embody the love and wisdom Abeba had seen in him from the beginning. Despite his great size and incredible abilities, he remained gentle and accessible, ready to help the smallest child or weakest animal with the same care he gave to the most important visitors. Each sunrise would find him at Abeba's grave, spending quiet moments before beginning his daily work. He would often bring fresh healing herbs to place on her resting place, a continuation of their shared dedication to the healing arts. These morning rituals became a symbol of how love could transcend both death and the boundaries between species. As years passed, Negasi's golden fur began to show streaks of silver, but his amber eyes retained their extraordinary wisdom and compassion. He had become more than just a remarkable animal or even a gifted healer. He was a living bridge between worlds, a testament to the transformative power of love and the endless possibilities that arise when we open our hearts to the unexpected. His story, intertwined with Abeba's, continued to inspire new generations of healers, conservationists, and dreamers. It reminded them that wisdom could come in many forms, that love knew no boundaries, and that the greatest healing of all came from understanding our profound connection to all living things. And so, in the mountains of Ethiopia, the legacy of the widow and her golden baboon lived on, not just in stories and memories, but in the daily acts of healing and harmony that continue to transform lives, bringing hope and understanding to all who witness their extraordinary gift to the world. As Negasi's legacy continued to flourish, unexpected developments began to reshape his role in the community. Young baboons from wild troops started appearing at the healing center, drawn by some invisible force to the golden healer. These newcomers showed unusual characteristics, heightened intelligence, gentler dispositions, and an eagerness to learn that mirrored Negasi's own early days with Abeba. The villagers watched in amazement as Negasi began systematically training these young primates, creating what some called the School of Golden Wisdom. His teaching methods combined practical healing skills with the deeper principles of compassion and understanding that had defined his relationship with Abeba. One young female baboon, her fur bearing unusual silver highlights, showed particular promise. The villagers named her Makeda after the legendary Queen of Sheba. Under Negasi's patient guidance, she learned to identify medicinal plants, assist with treatments, and even demonstrate basic diagnostic skills. This development sparked new interest from the scientific community. Dr. Mekonnen, now elderly himself, returned to document what he called the evolution of healing consciousness. His research suggested that Negasi wasn't just passing on knowledge. He was somehow awakening latent abilities in these young baboons, abilities that challenged conventional understanding of primate intelligence. As these changes unfolded, Negasi's own abilities continued to evolve in surprising ways. He developed new healing techniques that incorporated sound and movement, using specific vocalizations and gestures to promote healing. Patients reported experiencing profound physical and emotional transformations during these sessions. The healing center expanded to accommodate these new developments, with separate areas for traditional medicine, wildlife rehabilitation, and what became known as harmonic healing, Negasi's unique combination of sound, touch, and energy work. The once simple mountain clinic transformed into a place of pilgrimage for those seeking deeper understanding of the connections between all living things. One of Negasi's most remarkable achievements emerged through his work with the next generation of both human and baboon healers. The healing center became known as the Valley of Golden Light, where the boundaries between species dissolved in the pursuit of knowledge and healing wisdom. Young apprentices from across Ethiopia lived alongside the growing community of intelligent baboons, each learning from the other in ways that defied conventional understanding. Makeda, the silver-highlighted baboon, proved to be just the first of many extraordinary students. As her abilities grew, she developed her own unique healing specialties, particularly in treating children and other young animals. Her gentle presence and intuitive understanding of pediatric ailments made her an invaluable addition to the healing team. During one particularly challenging case, when a young girl arrived with a mysterious illness that had baffled doctors in Addis Ababa, Makeda and Nagasi worked together in perfect harmony. While Nagasi used his advanced diagnostic abilities, Makeda provided emotional support to the frightened child, her silver-touched fur catching the sunlight as she demonstrated breathing exercises that helped ease the girl's symptoms. The success of this partnership led to the establishment of specialized healing units within the center. Each unit combined the skills of human healers, trained baboons, and modern medical practitioners. This integrated approach proved so effective that government health officials began studying it as a model for rural healthcare delivery across Ethiopia. As his silver years advanced, Nagasi's wisdom seemed to deepen even further. He began spending more time in meditation near Abeba's grave, often accompanied by his students. These sessions became known as golden silence, periods when both humans and baboons would sit in peaceful contemplation, absorbing the subtle energies of healing that seemed to emanate from the sacred space. The story of the golden baboon and his human mother had evolved into something far greater than anyone could have imagined. It was no longer just about healing bodies. It was about healing the ancient rifts between humanity and nature, between modern and traditional knowledge, between the physical and spiritual realms of existence. One quiet dawn, as golden sunlight painted the mountains in ethereal hues, Nagasi stood motionless at Abeba's grave. His once brilliant fur had faded to a soft champagne color, streaked with dignified silver that caught the morning light. 20 years had passed since her passing, yet his daily ritual of visiting her resting place remained unchanged. But this morning felt different. There was a profound sense of completion in the air. The Valley of Golden Light had grown into something far beyond what either of them could have imagined. The humble healing center had evolved into a sprawling complex of traditional huts and modern facilities, seamlessly blending ancient wisdom with contemporary medicine. Dozens of specially gifted baboons, trained under Nagasi's guidance, now worked alongside human healers from across the globe. Makeda, her silver-streaked fur now resembling Nagasi's own, had become a master healer in her own right. She led a new generation of primate healers, each displaying unique abilities that continued to challenge scientific understanding. Some specialized in pediatric care, others in trauma healing, and a few showed remarkable skills in diagnostic medicine that rivaled modern technology. On this particular morning, Nagasi began his final masterwork, a systematic transfer of his most profound healing knowledge. He gathered his closest disciples, both human and baboon, around Abeba's grave. Through a series of intricate gestures and demonstrations, he began sharing secrets he had never revealed before. He showed them how to read the subtle energy fields around living beings, how to understand the complex interconnections between physical, emotional, and spiritual healing. His teachings went beyond mere medical knowledge. They were revelations about the very nature of consciousness and its role in healing. For 7 days and nights, Nagasi shared his wisdom. He demonstrated how to tap into the earth's natural healing energies, how to communicate with plants to understand their medicinal properties, and how to bridge the gap between species through pure compassion. Each lesson was a testament to the extraordinary journey that had begun with a lonely widow finding an injured golden baboon in the forest. The human healers documented everything meticulously, creating what would become known as the Golden Codex, a comprehensive guide to Nagasi's revolutionary healing methods. But the most profound teachings were those that couldn't be written down, the unspoken wisdom that passed directly from heart to heart. On the 7th day, as the sun reached its zenith, Nagasi led his students to the highest point of the valley. There, overlooking the flourishing healing center and the communities it served, he performed one final demonstration. Using all his accumulated knowledge and power, he created a healing ceremony that touched every living being in the valley. People later reported experiencing profound sensations during this event, waves of peace, understanding, and connection that transcended ordinary consciousness. Even the wild animals of the forest seemed affected, gathering at the edges of the villages in peaceful communion. After this demonstration, Nagasi returned to Abeba's grave. His students watched as he sat in his familiar meditation pose, his amber eyes gazing toward the horizon. As the sun began to set, a soft golden light seemed to emanate from his fur, growing stronger as darkness fell. When dawn broke the next day, Nagasi was gone. But in place of sadness, his departure left a sense of completion and purpose. He had transformed not just individual lives, but the very way humans and animals could interact and heal together. The legacy he left behind continued to grow in unexpected ways. The baboons he had trained began showing new abilities, passing on their knowledge not just to other primates, but to various species. The healing center became a model for similar institutions across Africa, each adapting his methods to local conditions and traditions. Years later, visitors to the Valley of Golden Light would still report unusual experiences, glimpses of a magnificent golden baboon in the early morning mist, the sound of gentle teaching in the wind, the inexplicable sense of being guided by an unseen presence. But perhaps his greatest legacy was the continuation of the love story that had begun with Abeba's compassion for an injured baby baboon. Their story became a testament to the transformative power of unconditional love, showing how it could transcend species, culture, and even death itself. The Golden Codex, studied by healers worldwide, contained a simple truth at its heart. True healing comes not from the medicine alone, but from the love with which it is given. This principle, demonstrated so perfectly by Nagasi and Abeba's partnership, continued to inspire new generations of healers. As their story spread across continents, it carried with it a profound message about the possibilities that emerge when we open our hearts to unexpected connections. The tale of the widow and her golden baboon became more than just a legend. It became a blueprint for a new way of understanding the connections between all living things. In the mountains of Ethiopia, where their story began, the Valley of Golden Light remained a beacon of hope and healing. Each sunrise brought new students eager to learn, new patients seeking help, and new opportunities to demonstrate the extraordinary power of love to transform and heal. And so, the legacy of Nagasi and Abeba lived on, not just in the books and teachings they left behind, but in every act of healing that bridged the gap between species, in every moment of compassion that transformed suffering into hope, and in every heart that opened to the possibility of love in unexpected forms. Their story reminds us that the greatest healers are those who dare to love beyond boundaries, who see the divine spark in all living beings, and who understand that true wisdom often comes in the most unexpected forms. In the end, their legacy wasn't just about healing bodies. It was about healing the ancient divisions between humanity and nature, between modern and traditional knowledge, between the physical and spiritual realms of existence. And in the soft golden light of dawn, when the mist rises over the Ethiopian highlands, some say you can still feel their presence, the wisdom of Abeba, the compassion of Nagasi, and the extraordinary power of love to transform our world, one heart at a time. The Valley of Golden Light became more than just a healing center. It evolved into a living testament of what was possible when barriers between species dissolved. The baboons trained by Nagasi, led by the silver-streaked Makeda, continued to develop extraordinary abilities that surpassed even their teacher's initial vision. Makeda, in particular, began pioneering new forms of healing that combined Nagasi's teachings with innovations of her own. She discovered ways to use sound vibrations in combination with traditional herbs, creating treatments that worked on both physical and energetic levels. Her gentle touch, combined with specific vocalizations, could ease chronic pain that had resisted all other forms of treatment. The human medical community, initially skeptical of these developments, could no longer deny the results. Research teams documented cases of seemingly miraculous recoveries, while neuroscientists mapped unprecedented patterns of brain activity in both healers and patients during these sessions. One breakthrough came when Makeda successfully treated a group of children suffering from a rare genetic disorder. Using a combination of herbal remedies, sound therapy, and gentle physical touch, she triggered healing responses that conventional medicine had failed to achieve. The children's recovery became a landmark case study in the integration of primate-led healing with modern medical practice. The influence of the Valley of Golden Light spread far beyond Ethiopia's borders, touching lives in ways no one could have predicted. Medical schools around the world began incorporating elements of what became known as the Nagasi method into their curricula. The combination of traditional wisdom, cross-species cooperation, and innovative healing techniques sparked a revolution in healthcare. Makeda's own students, both human and primate, carried these teachings to new territories. In India, a group of langur monkeys began showing similar healing abilities after exposure to the trained baboons. In Borneo, orangutans demonstrated unprecedented levels of medical intelligence when working with local healers who had studied the Golden Codex. The scientific community's understanding of animal consciousness underwent a dramatic shift. The success of the Valley's healing programs challenged long-held assumptions about the limits of primate intelligence and interspecies cooperation. Research papers documented cases where baboon healers accurately diagnosed conditions that had stumped human doctors, leading to successful treatments that combined both traditional and modern approaches. One particularly striking case involved a young elephant at a nearby sanctuary. The animal had been suffering from a mysterious ailment that veterinarians couldn't identify. Makeda, working with her team of trained baboons, not only diagnosed a rare fungal infection, but also developed a treatment protocol that saved the elephant's life and led to new understandings of wildlife medicine. These successes attracted attention from environmental conservationists who saw potential applications for wildlife protection and rehabilitation. The valley's methods of interspecies communication and healing began to influence conservation practices worldwide, leading to more effective and compassionate approaches to wildlife management. As the valley's influence grew, it never lost sight of its founding principles. Every morning before beginning their work, the entire community, human and animal healers alike, would gather at Abeba's grave to honor the legacy of love and wisdom that had made everything possible. In these quiet moments, they remembered that their work was not just about healing bodies, but about healing the ancient rifts between humans and nature. Their success proved that Ngasi's vision of a world where all species could work together for the greater good was not just a dream, but an achievable reality. The Valley of Golden Light stood as a living testament to the power of love, wisdom, and the extraordinary possibilities that emerge when we dare to look beyond our differences to the healing potential that lies within all living beings. As decades passed, the Valley of Golden Light underwent its most profound transformation yet. The simple healing center that Ngasi and Abeba had started had evolved into what locals called the Living University, a place where the boundaries between teacher and student, healer and patient, human and animal, dissolved into something entirely new. Makeda, now in her mature years, had developed the silver streaks in her fur into a magnificent pattern that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. Under her guidance, the third generation of baboon healers began showing abilities that even Ngasi might not have imagined. These young primates demonstrated not just healing capabilities, but a profound understanding of the interconnectedness of all life. One young baboon, whom they named Zahra, discovered she could communicate with plants in ways that revolutionized herbal medicine. She would sit for hours in the medicinal gardens, her hands gently touching different herbs, and somehow understand not just their healing properties, but how to combine them in ways that enhance their effectiveness. Her innovations led to breakthroughs in treating conditions that had long resisted both traditional and modern approaches. The human medical community could no longer ignore these developments. Leading hospitals around the world began establishing what they called interspecies healing units, where trained primates worked alongside human doctors. These units reported success rates that defied conventional medical statistics, particularly in cases involving children and those with conditions affecting the nervous system. But perhaps the most remarkable development came through the valley's influence on global environmental healing. The baboon healers began showing an unprecedented ability to detect and treat environmental imbalances. They could sense contaminated water sources, identify areas of soil degradation, and even predict natural disasters with startling accuracy. During a severe drought that threatened communities across East Africa, the healing center's primates led efforts to locate underground water sources and restore natural springs. Their success led to the establishment of environmental healing teams, groups of trained baboons working with human environmentalists to address ecological challenges. The valley itself had become a living laboratory of evolution. The constant interaction between humans and primates in an atmosphere of healing and learning seemed to accelerate the development of consciousness in both species. Children who grew up in the valley showed extraordinary empathy and intuitive abilities, while each new generation of baboons displayed increasing sophistication in their healing techniques. One remarkable incident demonstrated just how far this evolution had progressed. When a devastating earthquake struck a neighboring region, the valley's healing teams, both human and primate, mobilized immediately. The baboon healers showed an almost supernatural ability to locate survivors trapped in rubble, while their combined healing techniques helped prevent the spread of disease in refugee camps. But it was their work with trauma healing that truly showcased the depth of their capabilities. The baboon healers developed methods of emotional and psychological healing that transcended language barriers. Their techniques combined gentle touch, specific vocalizations, and what observers described as direct energy transfer to help survivors process their trauma. The success of these interventions led to the establishment of trauma healing sanctuaries across conflict zones worldwide. These centers, staffed by both human and primate healers, became beacons of hope in areas ravaged by war and natural disasters. Their work demonstrated that healing could occur even in the most challenging circumstances when approached with wisdom and compassion. As news of these developments spread, the valley became a pilgrimage site for those seeking to understand the future of healing. Scientists, spiritual leaders, and healthcare practitioners from every tradition came to study what many called the second evolution, the emergence of enhanced consciousness and healing abilities in both humans and primates. The valley's research center documented thousands of cases where conventional medical understanding was transformed by observations of the baboon healers' work. Their ability to diagnose conditions through subtle energy reading, their sophisticated use of sound and touch in healing, and their profound understanding of the mind-body connection challenged existing paradigms of healthcare. One groundbreaking study focused on the baboons' use of sound in healing. Researchers discovered that their healing vocalizations produced specific frequency patterns that could influence cellular repair and immune system function. This led to the development of new therapeutic approaches that combined traditional healing wisdom with advanced sound technology. The valley's influence extended into education as well. Universities worldwide began incorporating interspecies wisdom studies into their medical and environmental science programs. Students learned not just about healing techniques, but about the fundamental interconnectedness of all life forms and the importance of approaching healthcare from a truly holistic perspective. As the years passed, the valley became known as a place where miracles were not extraordinary events, but natural outcomes of applying universal healing principles. The baboon healers worked with an ever-expanding range of conditions, from physical ailments to psychological trauma, from individual healing to environmental restoration. Their work with children remained particularly powerful. Young patients who had not responded to conventional treatments would often show remarkable improvement after spending time with the baboon healers. The primates seemed to have an innate understanding of how to communicate with children using play, touch, and sound to facilitate healing on multiple levels. The valley's success inspired similar centers around the world, each adapting the principles of interspecies healing to local conditions and traditions. From the rainforests of Brazil to the mountains of Nepal, new healing communities emerged, each contributing to a growing body of knowledge about the possibilities of human-animal cooperation in healthcare. But perhaps the most profound impact was on how humans began to view their relationship with the natural world. The example set by the valley demonstrated that animals were not just subjects for study or resources to be used, but intelligent partners in the work of healing and environmental restoration. As Makeda entered her final years, she focused on ensuring that the valley's wisdom would continue to evolve and spread. She worked with both human and primate students to document the subtle aspects of their healing work, the things that couldn't be captured in medical textbooks or research papers. The Valley's library became a repository of both traditional and emerging healing wisdom. Alongside ancient herbal manuscripts and modern medical texts, new volumes documented the innovative techniques developed by generations of baboon healers. These records captured not just methods and procedures, but the underlying philosophy that made their work so effective. One of Makeda's most important contributions was the development of what became known as the Harmony Protocols, a comprehensive approach to healing that integrated physical, emotional, environmental, and spiritual aspects of health. These protocols emphasize the importance of maintaining balance not just within individual bodies, but between all living systems. The Valley's work with environmental healing expanded dramatically during this period. The baboon healers began teaching other animals to participate in ecosystem restoration. Birds would help spread seeds of medicinal plants, while larger mammals would assist in creating natural water retention systems. This cooperative approach to environmental healing produced results that amazed even experienced conservationists. As the sun set on another day in the valley, the sound of healing songs would float on the evening breeze, human voices blending with primate vocalizations, in harmonies that seemed to touch something deep in the hearts of all who heard them. These songs, carrying the wisdom of both species, became another tool in their healing arsenal. The legacy of Nagasi and Abeba had grown far beyond anything they might have imagined, yet remained true to their original vision of compassionate healing. Their story continued to inspire new generations of healers, both human and animal, to push the boundaries of what was possible when love and wisdom worked together. In the end, the Valley of Golden Light stood as a living testament to the power of breaking down barriers between species, between traditional and modern medicine, between science and spirituality. It showed that the future of healing lay not in choosing between different approaches, but in finding ways to integrate all forms of wisdom in service of life. And so, as the stars emerged over the Ethiopian highlands each night, the work of healing continued. In the gentle touch of baboon healers, in the grateful smiles of recovered patients, in the flourishing ecosystems restored to health, the miracle that began with a widow's compassion for an injured golden baboon continued to transform our understanding of what it means to heal, to love, and to grow together as one living community on this precious earth. This legacy stands as a beacon of hope, reminding us that the greatest healing comes when we open our hearts to unexpected possibilities and recognize the divine spark that connects all living beings. The story of the Valley of Golden Light continues to inspire those who dream of a world where wisdom flows freely between all species, where healing emerges from the harmony of different traditions, and where love knows no boundaries. The Valley's influence reached an unprecedented milestone when the United Nations established the first Interspecies Council for Global Healing, ICGH. This groundbreaking initiative brought together human medical experts, traditional healers, and trained primate healers from the Valley to address worldwide health challenges. The council's headquarters, built near the original healing center, incorporated design elements that facilitated communication between species. Zara, the gifted young baboon who had revolutionized herbal medicine, led a remarkable project that combined ancient wisdom with cutting-edge science. Working with botanists and chemists, she helped develop a new classification system for medicinal plants that took into account not just their chemical properties, but their energetic qualities and relationships with other species. The valley's success inspired similar developments across the globe. In the Amazon rainforest, indigenous healers began working with local primates to discover new medicinal plants. In India, temples dedicated to Hanuman, the monkey god, established healing centers that combined spiritual practices with the valley's interspecies healing methods. One of the most significant breakthroughs came when Makeda's students discovered ways to help humans develop enhanced sensory abilities. Through careful training, people began to perceive the subtle energy fields that the baboon healers had always been able to see. This development led to new understanding of how diseases developed and how healing could be initiated at an energetic level before physical symptoms appeared. The valley's approach to environmental healing expanded to address climate change. The baboon healers demonstrated an ability to communicate with trees and other plants, helping to optimize reforestation efforts and restore damaged ecosystems. Their work led to the development of living technologies that combined natural processes with human innovation to address environmental challenges. Research centers around the world began documenting what they called the Nagasi effect, the tendency for both human and animal intelligence to accelerate when they worked together in an atmosphere of mutual respect and purpose. Children who grew up around the trained baboons showed remarkable development in empathy, intuition, and problem-solving abilities. The final chapter of this extraordinary tale unfolds in ways that even the most optimistic observers could not have predicted. As Makeda reached her twilight years, her silver-streaked fur now almost completely white, the Valley of Golden Light prepared for its most profound transformation yet. The legacy of Nagasi and Abeba was about to enter a new dimension of healing that would touch lives across the globe. On a misty morning, as the sun painted the Ethiopian highlands in shades of amber reminiscent of Nagasi's fur, Makeda gathered her most accomplished students, both human and primate, for what would become known as the Great Teaching. She had spent months preparing for this moment, knowing that her own journey was nearing its completion. The gathering took place in a natural amphitheater formed by ancient baobab trees, their massive trunks serving as silent witnesses to this historic event. Healers from every continent had made the pilgrimage to the valley, drawn by an inexplicable sense that something extraordinary was about to unfold. For 7 days and 7 nights, Makeda shared the deepest mysteries of healing that she had learned from Nagasi and discovered through her own journey. She revealed techniques for accessing what she called the universal healing frequency, a state of consciousness where the boundaries between healer and patient, between species, and even between physical and spiritual realms dissolved completely. As she taught, something remarkable began to happen. The very air seemed to shimmer with golden light, reminiscent of Nagasi's legendary presence. Participants reported experiencing states of expanded awareness, where they could directly perceive the interconnected web of life that bound all beings together. The final gathering under Makeda's guidance marked the beginning of what would become known as the New Dawn of Healing. Over 7 transformative days and nights, she shared wisdom that transcended conventional understanding of both medicine and consciousness. The ancient amphitheater, formed naturally by centuries-old baobab trees, became a crucible of evolutionary change. During these sessions, Makeda revealed advanced healing techniques that merged the physical and energetic realms. She demonstrated how to access what she called the golden frequency, a state of consciousness where healing occurred spontaneously through the alignment of mind, body, and spirit. The assembled healers, both human and primate, learned to perceive and work with these subtle energies. One of the most remarkable demonstrations involved a group healing session where Makeda and her most advanced students created what observers described as a field of living light. Within this field, chronic conditions that had resisted all previous treatments began to resolve themselves. Patients reported feeling surrounded by the same golden warmth that had characterized Nagasi's presence years before. The valley's influence expanded exponentially after this event. New healing centers established around the world incorporated these advanced techniques, each adapting them to local traditions and needs. From the mountains of Tibet to the rainforests of Brazil, the integration of human and primate healing abilities created unprecedented breakthroughs in medical care. As Makeda's teachings spread, something extraordinary began happening among wild primate populations worldwide. Baboons, chimpanzees, and other primates started showing increased intelligence and healing abilities, as if the evolutionary leap that had begun with Nagasi was now reaching critical mass. Scientists dubbed this phenomenon the Golden Wave, a spontaneous emergence of enhanced consciousness among primates globally. The United Nations established the World Institute for Interspecies Healing, WWH, headquartered in the valley. This organization brought together the most gifted human and primate healers to address global health challenges. Their combined efforts led to breakthroughs in treating previously incurable diseases and developing new approaches to environmental restoration. Perhaps the most profound development came through what became known as the Harmony Protocol, a comprehensive system of healing that integrated physical, emotional, spiritual, and environmental wellness. This approach recognized that true healing could only occur when all aspects of life were in balance, from the individual to the planetary level. Young primates trained in the valley began showing abilities that surpassed even Makeda's expectations. One particularly gifted young baboon, named Aurora for her luminous presence, developed the ability to perceive and heal trauma stored in cellular memory. Her work with survivors of war and natural disasters produced results that defied medical explanation. The Valley's Research Center documented thousands of cases where conventional medical understanding was transformed by these new healing approaches. The combination of primate intuition, ancient wisdom, and modern science created a new paradigm of healthcare that emphasized prevention and holistic wellness over merely treating symptoms. Environmental healing took on new dimensions as trained primates began working with other species to restore damaged ecosystems. They demonstrated an ability to communicate with plants, insects, and even microscopic organisms, creating balanced and sustainable environmental solutions. Their work led to the regeneration of forests, the purification of polluted waters, and the restoration of natural habitats. The valley's influence extended into education, with universities worldwide, establishing departments of interspecies medicine and consciousness studies. Students learned not just healing techniques, but the fundamental principles of unity consciousness that made such healing possible. The boundaries between different medical traditions, Western, Eastern, traditional and modern, began to dissolve as practitioners recognized the validity of multiple approaches to healing. As Makeda entered her final days, she gathered her closest disciples for one last teaching. Under the same baobab trees where she had first learned from Nagasi, she shared her vision of the future, a world where the artificial boundaries between species would continue to dissolve, where healing would emerge naturally from the recognition of life's fundamental unity. On her last evening, as the sun set over the valley, something extraordinary occurred. Witnesses described seeing a golden light emanating from Makeda's form, similar to what had been reported during Nagasi's departure years before. As the light grew stronger, those present experienced what they could only describe as a direct transmission of pure healing consciousness. When the light faded with the setting sun, Makeda was gone, but her presence seemed to permeate the entire valley. The baobab trees appeared to glow with an inner light, and all the living beings in the area, human, primate, and other animals, experienced a profound sense of peace and connection. In the years that followed, the Valley of Golden Light continued to evolve in ways that honored both Nagasi's original vision and Makeda's expansive legacy. The healing center became a living laboratory of consciousness evolution, where the boundaries between different species and healing traditions continued to dissolve. New generations of healers, both human and primate, developed increasingly sophisticated abilities. They learned to work with subtle energies, to communicate across species barriers, and to facilitate healing on both individual and collective levels. Their work demonstrated that consciousness itself was the key to healing, transcending the limitations of physical form. The valley's influence spread through what observers called the ripple effect. As healers trained, they returned to their home communities. They catalyzed similar evolutionary developments in local populations. Wild primates began showing enhanced abilities, and humans who worked with them experienced accelerated development of their own healing capabilities. Research centers worldwide documented these changes, creating a new field of study called evolutionary medicine. This approach recognized that healing was not just about treating illness, but about facilitating the natural evolution of consciousness in all species. The valley's methods were incorporated into medical schools, environmental programs, and peace-building initiatives globally. The integration of human and primate healing abilities led to breakthrough treatments for conditions that had long resisted conventional approaches. Autism, dementia, and various neurological disorders showed remarkable improvement when treated through interspecies healing techniques. The primate healers seemed to have an innate understanding of these conditions and could facilitate healing in ways that traditional medicine could not achieve alone. Environmental healing projects demonstrated unprecedented success rates when guided by trained primates. Their ability to communicate with other species and understand complex ecological relationships led to more effective conservation and restoration efforts. Climate change initiatives began incorporating their insights, leading to innovative solutions for environmental challenges. The valley became a model for a new way of living, one where different species work together in conscious cooperation for the benefit of all. Visitors described experiencing a palpable field of healing energy that seemed to permeate the entire area. Many reported spontaneous healings simply from spending time in this enriched environment. As the story of Nagasi, Abeba, and Makeda spread, Across generations, it inspired countless individuals to explore the boundaries of what was possible in healing and consciousness evolution. Their legacy lived on not just in the techniques they had developed, but in the fundamental understanding that love, wisdom, and healing transcended all apparent boundaries between species. The Valley of Golden Light stood as a living testament to the power of unconditional love and the unlimited potential for healing when beings of different species worked together in harmony. It demonstrated that the future of healing lay not in technology alone, but in the evolution of consciousness and the recognition of the fundamental unity of all life. And so, the miracle that began with a widow's compassion for an injured golden baboon continued to unfold, touching lives across the planet and pointing the way toward a future where healing emerged naturally from the recognition of our essential oneness. The story remained unfinished, for each new generation added its own chapter to this ongoing testament to the power of love to transform our world. As the sun sets each evening over the Valley of Golden Light, the baobab trees still seem to glow with an inner radiance, and visitors from around the world continue to find healing and inspiration in this sacred space, where the boundaries between species dissolved and a new understanding of healing was born. The legacy of the golden baboon lives on, not just in the continuing work of the valley, but in the growing recognition worldwide that true healing comes from love, that wisdom can wear many forms, and that the future of humanity lies in conscious cooperation with all living beings. And so the story continues, evolving and growing, touching new lives and inspiring new possibilities with each passing day. The most profound impact of the Valley's work began to manifest in unexpected ways across the globe. In the dense rainforests of Borneo, orangutans, who had never had direct contact with the Valley's trained primates, started exhibiting similar healing abilities. Reports came in of orangutans leading lost children to safety, treating injured animals, and even helping local healers identify medicinal plants. Similar phenomena appeared in the mountains of Rwanda, where mountain gorillas began showing unprecedented levels of medical intelligence. They were observed creating poultices from specific plants to treat wounds, and displaying complex understanding of plant properties that even local herbalists hadn't discovered. Scientists studying these developments proposed what they called the collective consciousness theory, suggesting that the evolutionary leap initiated by Nagase and advanced by Makeda had created a kind of telepathic network among primates worldwide. This network seemed to facilitate the sharing of healing knowledge across vast distances. The Valley began documenting these spontaneous occurrences, creating a global database of emerging primate healing abilities. This research led to new understandings of consciousness evolution and the interconnectedness of all living beings. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.